Okay. Hello. So good morning, everyone, or afternoon, or evening. I don't really know what time you're watching this. Whatever. So in this case, we are going to talk about formulating a research question, as this is in preparation of your performance task. Now, in any case, the essential question that we want to talk about here is that what are the criteria in evaluating good research questions? So at the end of the session, we should be able to think of ways to evaluate a good research question. And that these are the objectives for this particular short video. Now, usually I would like you to think of a question about these topics, but in the interest of time, we will be skipping this particular activity. Yep, this was done in the actual um, class session. But in any case, I'd like to introduce to you the 6 types of research questions. So with that, the first one is your descriptive type of research question. So in any case, we are going to take all these research questions in the context of my duck cup. Yeah. Now, in any case, we're going to talk about a descriptive type of question, and that the descriptive questions oftentimes ask for characteristics of the particular topic. Like, what are the characteristics of this duck cup, or what makes a good cup? What makes a good duck cup, more or less. So, I hope that at the next pause, you can think of your own type of descriptive questions. So, go. Now, at this point, if you have paused the video, I'm going to say that that's a good question because I want you to keep trying to think of your own questions. Up next, we have comparative. So with comparative research questions, we want to compare and contrast two different topics altogether, two different subjects. Now, in this case, let's try to compare and contrast what are the differences and similarities between my bare spoon and my bare fork. So that's one example of a particular type of question in the comparative sense. Okay. So in any case, hopefully you can try to think of your own research questions as well. Of course, you can take it into the context of what's currently happening in our environment, and that would be best, especially that these types of research questions are what you will be using for your performance task. So after this, kindly pause this video and think of your own comparative research question. So pause. And hopefully you were able to actually think of a comparative research question there. So up next, we have your exploratory research question. And oftentimes, exploratory research questions are a bit tricky because they tend to explore deeper concepts about a particular topic, especially if the topic is currently new or is definitely understudied. So, for example, right now, one of the most understudied, whether one of the new concepts we have right now is your COVID-19. So, for example, what are the main factors in COVID-19 transmission, especially since nowadays it is currently being studied? So, there. On the other hand, we also have your explanatory research questions. So, for explanatory research questions, again, the keyword is we're trying to explain. So therefore, we're trying to take note if two factors have a cause and effect relationship. So more or less, again, we are focusing on the cause and effect relationship of two certain subjects. Or in a way, medyo causal, the whole nature of the question is causal. We're looking for the cause or of something. So for example, does X have an effect on Y? So does my cute utensils have a good effect on my day, my mood for the day? Because I really do love breakfast. I'm a big fan of breakfast. I try to explore as many breakfast recipes as I can. Or for example, what does lockdowns does rather, do lockdowns have an effect on COVID-19 transmission? Or we can say, um, does retail therapy have an effect on our mental health, for example? There. Up next, we have your evaluation. So for evaluation, we're trying to check on the disadvantages and advantages of a certain concept or a subject. Or at the same time, we can also look into assessing if something is good or not, if something works or not. Like, for example, what are the advantages and disadvantages of the online distance learning setup, for example? Or what are the advantages and disadvantages of staying at home or working from home, studying from home? So as you pause the video in the next couple of seconds, I'd like you to think of your own explanatory and evaluation type of research question. So pause. Now, eventually, as you unpause this video, I'm hoping that you thought of some good questions as well, especially since this short exercise will help you when you start to think of your research questions. Now, the last one is action. So with regards to action, we have an end goal. So the question will eventually translate into a goal. So the results of the research that is brought about by this question wants to have a goal achieved. So in this case, how can X be achieved, or what strategies can be used to improve Y? Let's say, how can we I don't want to say get rid, but how can we achieve full vaccination in Metro Manila or in the Philippines? Better yet, of course, it's a bit, or what strategies can be used to improve the online distance learning setup? Or what strategies can be, or what, in what ways um, can we improve our time management skills or whatnot? So hopefully, as you pause the video in the next couple of seconds, you can think of your own action questions. So 3, 2, and 1, pause. All right. So I really do hope that you thought of a question as well, and get those brain cells working, practice it out. And of course, if you are unsure about your own questions, of course, you may always email me, ask me if you have the correct thing going on. Okay. I'm always just one email away. Okay. So for the next part, we have the five correct to have the five characteristics of a research question. And for this one, we are going to use the acronym FINER, 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 FINER. There we go. So in any case, the F in FINER means feasible. So again, you want to make sure that you have the appropriate amount of subjects or number of subjects. You want to make sure you have the technical expertise to analyze and construct your paper. You also want to be able to make sure that you can afford it in terms of time and money. And of course, you want to make sure that it's manageable, that you can do it in a certain amount of time. So remember, F in FINER is for feasible. Up next, we have I. So I in FINER means interesting. But in this case, it's interesting for you and for others as well. But when you do your research, it's best to take note of your own interest as well, because you're the one who does the research. So in this case, you are the one who is moving the research along. So if you're going to think of a research question and a topic, make sure it's interesting for you. For you. Yes. Finally, we have, or rather, up next, we have N. So the N in FINER means novel. So when we say novel, you want to provide new findings. Or if you can't generate anything new, you can also confirm, refute, or extend the previous findings of other people. So it's not necessarily generating a new idea altogether, but you may also improve the findings, the previous findings. There we go. So up next, E is ethical. The E in Finer is ethical. So you try to follow an institutional standard for review. And of course, when you are seeking information from others, when you are doing interviews or rather surveys, you want to make sure that you have people's consent. So therefore, you might want to have a consent form and inform them, the subjects, of the processes that you will be asking of them to be able to generate data for the research. Remember, when we do research, we may want to find out new stuff. But at the same time, if you cross boundaries and if you make other people feel uncomfortable, then the sake of research is actually being compromised. So it has to be ethical. And finally, we have R. The R in finer means relevant. So in this case, it should be relevant to scientific knowledge, clinical and health policy, and of course, for future research. And of course, it should be relevant to you as well and to your own interests. And in this case, of course, in any case, make sure that may patutunguhan that eventually your research will have something to prove. So, in summary, these are the characteristics of our finer criteria. So remember, F is for feasible, I is for interesting, N is for novel, E is for ethical, and of course, R is for relevant. So what does that spell? Finer! Yes, of course. Scream it out loud. Now, here are a couple of research questions that we have, and I'd like you to evaluate them as we go through these questions. So first and foremost is, how do Miriam College students' study habits change from preschool to high school? So at this point, you might want to pause the video so you can have some time to think about it. So pause. Now, after you unpause it, the issue here is that it's not really feasible because the scope of the study rather is too long. And that if you're a grade 11 student doing this for about 3 months, you're going to struggle with the amount of people that you're going to evaluate or ask about. The second one is this question. Why does lack of sleep affect a person's concentration levels? Now, in any case, maybe you can think about it and pause this video as you think of it. So 3, 2, 1, pause. Now, according to this one, the interest is being ignored, so it might not be too interesting for other people. But in any case, I think that it's not, we can also consider novel, how novel it is, because this particular topic has always been evaluated as well, has always been looked into. Up next, we have here, how has the truffle shortage in France affected its tourism? So after you've heard my horrible French accent, kindly pause the video as you think about it. Pause. Now, after you unpause it, eventually it's not exactly novel and that this particular problem has been well documented there. It's like mangoes, like not having enough mangoes in Cebu. Can you imagine that? A mango-less Cebu? Now we have the next question here. How do children under 5 years of age respond to media with extreme violence? Now, in this case, kindly think about this question and evaluate it. So, in 3, 2, 1, pause. Now, of course, as you unpause this particular problem is unethical. This research topic is unethical because it's improper to treat the children without considering their well-being. Because of course, this may affect how they develop. Because children at young ages are very impressionable, so they oftentimes model themselves after what they see, and that this also is very illegal. Of course, we don't want to trample on children's rights to a safe environment. So we have this last question. What are the factors that employees consider for availing early retirement? So think about that in 3, 2, and 1. Pause. Now, as you unpause this might not exactly be relevant because the topic is quite detached from the researchers. In this case, the researchers are grade 11 students. So if the researchers were about my age in the working class, then it may be interesting, or it may be relevant. But for kids around your age or students around your age, it might not be important right now. Instead, you'd be looking into college applications and whatnot and a good university experience. Oh, finally, as we come to the conclusion of this particular lecture, I'd like you to recall what are the criteria in evaluating good research questions. So, what's the first one? F. What's the second one? I is for interesting. So, first, it should be feasible. Second, it should be interesting. Third is N for novel. Fourth is E or ethical. And finally, the last one is R or relevant. And what does that spell? Finer. So attached in your classwork is actually a short homework. And that next week we will be, I will ask you to go to your groups and, or if ever, if you don't have group mates, that's okay as well. You can work on your own with this particular research paper with our performance task. It can be done from 1 to 5 people. But however, as early as now, I want everyone, every single one of you to think of around 3 to 5 topics of interest for your research, and try to submit it via the classwork tab. This does not, it will have a deadline, but this is not graded. So more or less, this is in preparation for your performance task. So as we end this particular video, I'd like to share with you this quote from Zora Hurston. Research is formalized curiosity. It is poking and prying with a purpose. So hopefully, as we end this video, I hope that you take the time out to poke and pry your very own curiosities around you. Yeah. And hopefully share the knowledge with the people around you. So with that, bye-bye. Of course, I'll be ending this video. So in any case, I'll be pressing the stop recording button. Yep.